In India, I would say we are still struggling more than most European countries with the problem of social inequality. But we do have tremendous skills in digital space, in engineering, and in cultural production. So the question is how we can pull those things together in India in order to create more inclusion of the people below. We have some very serious problems. For one thing, speculation has become substantially delinked from innovation. So the innovators are here and the speculators are somewhere else. As a consequence, I believe we have another gap related to the gap that I spoke about earlier, the social gap, which is a gap between risk makers in the globalized world, and many of you know who they are, but these risk makers are increasingly not the risk takers. The risk makers and the risk bearers are now dramatically divided. I believe this is perhaps the major source, this gap between the risk makers and the risk bearers is the major source of what I would call social uncertainty. Culture, I believe, is the main tool, I stress, the main tool for managing social uncertainty. In places like India, but I think this is true elsewhere in the world also, culture has great potential for giving people some understanding of the world they are in and of where they fit and of where they can go. Culture should not be treated as something extra outside the economy in which we should invest because it is beautiful, it's decorative, it's nice. That is true. Culture must be seen as something crucial to the economy itself. And one of the ideas I proposed is that we should not make a separation between the imagination, which is what artists and creative people have, and innovation, which happens in science and technology, in industry and in business. We need to bring imagination and innovation into the same space. I do think that we see today in the digital era many large companies that are playing a leadership role, like Google in the US or Bertelsmann in Germany. And I think I have nothing against this. Is good. These are people who are creating innovation and moving cultural products around. But I think the life of culture in the end has to be at a lower level, closer to the ground, closer to smaller populations, communities. And the reason for that is that I think the higher the level at which you work, things tend to become more standard. You come closer to the ground, things become more difference and diversity operates. So whether it's Germany or India or China or the US, the closer you come to smaller places, smaller towns, smaller regions, you also get the texture of diversity at the level of cultural production. But the more you become abstract and global, things become very general, very uniform, very standard, and people don't particularly like that. They want difference. I think the role of artists is crucial. Why? Because artists are the people who, by definition, are always thinking outside the box. They're always thinking about the next thing, or they're always thinking about rearranging things. So when they see one arrangement, they shake things up and we get a new arrangement. So the reason I say that imagination and innovation come together, must come together, is because I believe that it's in the work of art
that we imagine new possibilities for technology, new possibilities for society, new possibilities for politics. Of course, it may require other people to make these things practical and to design them. But to have the idea, I think art is our single greatest resource. I'm very glad that the forum here has many people who are coming from the film world, from literature, from dance, from performance. And I think this is not only a secondary thing or something for entertainment, but I think it's actually, art is the kind of source for new ideas for social life and for culture itself. Well, that's a very good question. Where does creativity come in to my own profession, which is as a researcher and a teacher? Well, one thing is, of course, to try to ask the great questions that many people have asked in the past again. So, for example, I'm very interested in the work of the great German scholar Max Weber, but I try to ask myself, what would Max Weber say today, not in his day? So that's one way in which we are creative, is by trying to repeat but change what somebody said. And then, of course, when we teach, we have to be creative all the time, because we're in a dialogue always. So as long as we listen, we have to be creative, because we can't tell the same story again and again.